Tvam, your lordship, eva, certainly, dharma artha dugha, benefit derived from religion and economic development, abhipataye, for their protection, dakshena, by daksha, sutrena, making him the cause, sasarjita, created, advaram, sacrifices, tvaya, by you, eva, certainly, loke, in this world, avasita, regulated, cha, and setava, respect for the Varnashram institution. Yan, which, Brahmana, the Brahmins, Shradate, respect very much. Drita Vrata, taking it as a vow. Translation: my dear Lord, my dear Lord, your Lordship has introduced the system of sacrifices through the agency of daksha, and thus one may derive the benefits of religious activities and economic development. Under your regulative principles, the institution of the 4 varnas and ashrams is respected. The Brahmins therefore vow to follow the system strictly. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedic system of Varna and Ashram is never to be neglected, for these divisions are created by the Supreme Lord himself for the upkeep of social and religious order in human society. The Brahmins, as the intelligent class of men in society, must vow to steadily respect this regulative principle. The tendency in this age of Kali to make a classless society and not observe the principles of Varna and Ashram is a manifestation of an impossible dream. Destruction of the social and spiritual orders will not bring fulfillment of the idea of a classless society. One should strictly observe the principles of Varna and Ashram for the satisfaction of the Creator. For it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna that the 4 orders of the social system, Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, are his creation. They should act according to the regulative principles of this institution and satisfy the Lord. Just as different parts of the body all engage in the service of the whole. The whole is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Virat Rupa, or universal form. The Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are respectively the mouth, arms, abdomen, and legs of the universal form of the Lord. As long as they're engaged in the service of the complete whole, their position is secure. Otherwise, they fall down from their respective positions and become degraded. Tvameva dharmata dugabi pataye dakshena sutrena sasarjitadvaram tvayaiva loke vasitascha setavo yan brahmana shraddha date drita vrata. My dear Lord, your lordship has introduced the system of sacrifices through the agency of daksha, and thus one may derive the benefits of religious activities and economic development. Under your regulative principles, the institution of the 4 varnas and ashrams is respected. The Brahmins therefore vow to follow the system strictly. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Niravishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So as we see in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada he's really putting emphasis on the Varnashram system. It's never to be neglected because it's created by the Lord for keeping human society in order in different respects, in all respects actually. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 4, what is it? Verse 10. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasha. That the 4 Chaturvarnyam, the 4 varnas particularly he mentions. But of course we understand that the ashrams also they're part of the picture. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam. They are created by me. They are created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Guna karma vibhagasha. And people are to be positioned, placed in the system according to guna and karma, according to the mode of existence that they have, the natural type of personality and interests that they have, and which of course will also be reflected in their work, their activities, particularly their work. So this is Prabhupada's emphasizing it here, and as we go through Srila Prabhupada's books, particularly Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that from time to time, regularly, Srila Prabhupada addresses the subject from different perspectives. Oftentimes, or on a number of occasions, Prabhupada addresses the concept of Varnashram in terms of government. That is, we see that, it's there on a number of occasions. How society should be governed, by who, and in what ways. These things are there. And then, of course, there's also emphasis on the Brahmins. They're the part they have to play in the whole picture of Varna and Ashram. And so here Prabhupada's emphasizing it, it's never to be neglected. But not only that, not only should it be done, because it's the arrangement of the Lord and people should follow the arrangements of the Lord, but also we see that, like it or not, deliberately or not, in human society, people following the system, you can say. Yes, at least, if not in very specific and clear-cut terms, but definitely if we look around, we see there's an intelligent class of person who are like educators, scholars, and writers, and these types of people who are really thinking and expressing themselves in different ways. Then there's an administrative class and a warrior class. These two are together, the Kshatriya Varna of life. They're people who just have that sort of nature. The career politicians, the career military persons. I remember many years ago when we were raising funds for building this temple, Ramanuja Prabhu and we were somewhere in South Africa, and we met with one family, and we're trying to engage them in the service of Radha Radhanath. And this man, we asked him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soldier, I'm in the army." He had some sort of little bit higher position there, some sort of officer. And I expressed, "Oh, really, you're a soldier?" Because I was a little surprised. You know, generally, to become a soldier is not such a popular idea. People get drafted into the army and they don't like it. So yeah, I expressed a little bit of surprise. "Oh, you're a soldier?" And he said, "Yes, I like fighting." And he meant real fighting with weapons, and he had just returned from, at that time, somewhere where these things were going on. So some people, they have this actual nature, this inclination. Although in time of war, Srila Prabhupada talks about in time of war, that they just force the young men, the young men particularly, they just force them to join the army, take up weapons, and actually go out there and face the enemy. And Srila Prabhupada, I was reading, Prabhupada was talking about this, and he was saying how these young men, the great majority, when they actually go out there and they're facing the enemy, then they're in extreme fear. They're in great fear. It's just such a horrible thing for them because they don't have that type of nature. They have some other type of nature. But as that particular young man said, he liked doing it. He liked doing it. Yes, and then of course, there's a business class. They're very prominent, trying to make money, make lots of money, and just enjoy with that money. And of course, there's an overlap. You know, it's not so specific nowadays, even though the basic form of these things, the basic forms of these varnas are definitely there. But in specific, very specific, clear-cut terms, it's not always so clear-cut. So it's very common nowadays for people who are from business backgrounds to take up kshatriya or like administrative duties. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. And So therefore the immediate former president of America, he was very much from a like full-scale business background, not an administrative background. So that it does happen sometimes, some sort of mixing. So, but the Vaishya community is there, productive class, as Prabhupada would say sometimes, that they're doing business, and they're also doing farming and producing foodstuffs for everyone. These things are going on. And these people, the Vaishya types, they're very much into it. They're very much into it, accumulating and purchasing and investing and so on like that. And then, of course, there is the Sudra class, the laborer class. They're generally, numerically, there's more of them. And they don't really have ambitions so much other than just to stay alive and earn enough to keep body and soul together, keep a roof over their head, keep the family going like this. But beyond that, they don't really have so much in the way of ambition, like the Vaishyas particularly, of accumulating more, or the Kshatriyas to get more power, this sort of thing, or the Brahmins to really increase their knowledge, their understanding, and to try to spread knowledge and understanding. But one way or the other, if we look, even in this country, we find that this sort of structure is there in a mixed up type of way, but it's at least the basic outline of it is definitely there. There's no doubt about it. And then, of course, there's the ashrams, brahmachari, then grihasta, then vanaprastha, then sannyas. Those are there, at least in very simple terms, the basic form is there. There's definitely a student stage of life in regular society. There's definitely a student stage of life, and even to the point that if parents do not send their children to school or put them through some sort of recognized educational system, in many countries, in so many countries, it's illegal. It's illegal if they stop their children being educated. So that stage of life is there, not as it was in Vedic times, where particularly the young boys became brahmacharis and were trained in the ashram of a spiritual master and trained spiritually. But then as time went on, depending on their background in terms of varna and their natures in terms of varna, then they received some training for the particular varna, particular occupational type of activity they're going to go into when they finish the student stage. So that's there. And then, of course, the grihasta stage, that obviously, that's so extremely prominent also, that the vast majority of people either actually become married, or if not like literally actually married, but they enter into relationships of that sort and produce a family and like this. So it's a type of grihasta stage. And then in so many cases, in most cases, they also go into a type of vanaprastha stage, retired stage, and stop working and just relax, and maybe they just do sort of recreational things. Maybe they play golf, or they go on tours here and there, and that sort of thing. They call it the golden years. But, of course, generally only when you reach that stage of the golden, what they call the golden years, do you understand it's not so golden. It's, people, by that time they have reached that sort of age, they've usually run out a lot of steam. Although an interesting point is that to some degree at least, more than it used to be in Western society, now some sort of percentage of people, maybe not so many, but some noticeable amount, they continue working. Even though they have passed a normal retirement age, 60 or 65, something like that. But they carry on working and just carry on until they're physically unable. And they don't have like a regular retired stage in their lives so much. And then, of course, the sannyas stage, the renounced order for those who are older and educated spiritually, that at best, generally, there's a vanaprastha stage of some sort, but real sannyas stage you don't get in regular society. But other than that, other than their not really being a real parallel of the sannyas stage in modern society, still the basic forms of the 4 varanas and at least 3 of the ashrams, they're there. And it's quite plain, quite easy to see. And Prabhupada here mentions the idea, the attempt, the tendency, Prabhupada says, the tendency in this age of Kali to make a classless society. Of course, there's an element of envy in that the Sudras generally are in the majority numerically. And of course, being Sudras materially, they're not as well situated as the other types of persons, the business people, the administrators, or the intellectuals. So, those 3 categories, they're almost always much better situated in terms of living facilities and just facilities in general, and the material world being a place of envy, and Kali Yuga being a time when envy and other bad qualities really become magnified. So the majority Sudras, laborers, they don't like it when they see these other classes are doing usually so much better materially than they are. So therefore, there's the idea of the classless society, which particularly the attempt was made to create it through communism. But so far, communism has failed, because like when our devotees in Lithuania, which was part of the Soviet Union in those days, they were trying to get Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita printed in the Soviet Union. So they found one printing government. Everything belonged to the government. They found one government business, a printing house. Government. It's all completely under the government. But here, the manager of the printing company, every now and then he would take paper out. The paper was owned by the government, but he would steal some of the paper and keep it one side and do private jobs for cash. So he agreed to print Bhagavad Gita for the devotees with some of the stolen paper just for cash to go in his pocket in the middle of this so-called classless communist society. The books, so every night he would print a few hundred or whatever. Every night after hours they would stay and print some books over a period of a couple of weeks or something like that. In the middle of all of that, the devotees found out this man is KGB, means extremely heavy and extremely violent internal security police. And the devotees thought, that's it, we've had it, we're finished. We're all going to be arrested, and they'll throw away the key, and that'll be the end of us. But no, the man delivered the books, took the money, and even though he was KGB, he was happy to do that. So what they found, they're trying to make it a classless society, but they found they couldn't, because people just have those natures and they can't really stop them from coming out. And therefore communism collapsed, and like that. But anyway, the system is there, Varna and Ashram. And as Prabhupada says, it's never to be neglected. And in ISKCON, we have it also. And it's we carefully maintain at least certain aspects of the Varnashram system. Certain aspects, not the whole thing, but certain aspects, like brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha, and sannyas. They're there in Krishna consciousness and Prabhupada's ISKCON. And there are distinct differences between the ashrams, distinct basically in the same terms as you found in the very traditional Varnashram system before, back hundreds of years ago or even thousands of years ago. So that's there in Prabhupada's ISKCON. Devotees generally, if they're able, which so many are, they become Brahmins. Yes, they get Brahminical initiation. And it's not just sort of some mark that you've been around for some time. It's meant to be a recognition that you have actually developed spiritually and developed the qualities of a Brahmin. Like that. And yeah, so that's there. And yeah, to some degree, these things are there, to some degree. Not as hard and fast as it used to be in the past. Of course, Srila Prabhupada noted regularly in his preaching and teaching and writing how the Varnashram system had deteriorated in India, or say in India or Greater India, and become degraded, that the higher orders, they, instead of looking after those in the lower positions, they exploited them for their own material benefit. So like this, the Varnashram system became the caste system and has developed a very, very bad reputation indeed, outside of India at least, and even within India to some degree. So Prabhupada is emphasizing these things here. And for us, we should recognize the position we're in and live according to that position. In other words, if someone is a brahmachari, they should be brahmacharis. They should maintain those standards of celibacy, surrender to the spiritual master, being the humble servant of the spiritual master, and trying to preach and spread Krishna consciousness, these types of activities. Grihastas, they have to maintain the standards of Grihasta life. And of course Vanaprasthas, and of course sannyasis. So that we need to understand what position we're in or should be in, and at least while we're in a position, certain role in life in terms of Varnashram, do our best to maintain those standards nicely. Then Srila Prabhupada, or rather Lord Brahma, says here that that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has introduced, well, it's Lord Brahma, he's speaking to Lord Shiva, that Lord Shiva has introduced the system of sacrifice through the agency of Daksha, because Daksha was in the middle or at some point in doing some major karmakandiya sacrifice when this whole situation developed between him and Lord Shiva. So of course that was karmakandiya, part of the system of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So that's there, the system of sacrifice on the material level, which is part of at least the functioning of materialistic society. But the system, the practice of the performance of sacrifice is an essential part of the functioning of the material world, like Varnashram is there, created by the Lord for society, but the performance of sacrifice is there also as an integral part of what is human society. So the Lord in Bhagavad Gita talks about this, chapter 3, verse 10. Sahayagya prajashishtva puravacha prajapati anena prasavishyadvam eshavosht vishtakamāduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." So just as Varnashram is there for everyone, it's not just for certain people. Actually, it's there either directly, consciously, or just unconsciously. One way or the other, it's there for everyone. So also, the principle, at least the principle of sacrifice, is there for everyone. Whether they perform sacrifice in a religious sense, which is what Lord Krishna is stating here, or whether they don't do sacrifice in that religious sense, but rather they just work. When one works at a job to earn and maintain like that, then one has to sacrifice one's time and energy. And from time to time, devotees complain to us that they have to work so hard that when they finish come home in the evening, they're finished. And it's just very hard. If they've got some rounds left to do or like that, it's really hard to get into it because they're quite exhausted from a hard day at work. So that's also a sacrifice, sacrificing one's energy, sacrificing one's time. And that's also all-pervading, as Varnashram, in certain respects at least, is just all-pervading anyway, officially or unofficially in human society. So the principle of sacrifice is also basically all-pervading. Everyone has to, if not perform religious activities of sacrifice, at least they have to work. And from what we hear, they usually don't like their work. The Monday morning blues we hear about. But it's going on. So Varnashram, connected with the process of sacrifice, some form of sacrifice, these are norms in human society, either directly or indirectly. And both of them are the arrangement of the Lord, as we read here. The process of sacrifice was arranged by the Lord, and He arranged this world with different items which can be used, intended to be used in sacrifice. And then earlier, of course, we quoted, it's actually Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 13. Chaturvanyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagasha tasya kartaram api mam vidyakartaram avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I'm the creator of this system, you should know that I'm yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Yes, so Varnashram, it's Krishna's system. Of course, there's another point which Prabhupada makes here, and it's really a very important point about varnashram, and the principle applies in regard to different types of sacrifice. All these things should be done in the service of the complete whole, in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Varnashram, in varnashram, whatever your role is as Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra, whatever stage you're in, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyas, your activities should be performed for the service, for the pleasure, the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada says, if it's done like that, in the purport here, their position is secure. Otherwise, they fall down from their respective positions and become degraded. Yes, so-called Brahmins, so-called Kshatriyas, big administrators, but if there's some war, they call up all the young boys from like 18 to 24 or something. These, with all due respect, kind of foolish young boys, and just give them guns and send them out to quite possibly be killed while they stay back and in comfort and security just tell them, the young people, what to do. So this is degradation, the degradation of the varnashram system. And of course, sacrifice should be done for the Supreme Lord. One's duties should be performed for the pleasure of the Lord and not just independent from the Lord. And because otherwise they fall down from their respective positions and become degraded. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? Hare Krishna. Oh, yes. Swetadweep Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So, since our society started, we understood that Prabhupada, he established his society to train Brahminical culture, Brahmins. But of course, Prabhupada also mentioned that the next phase is to establish Varnashram Dharma, Devi Varnashram. My question is that we do have training, we do facilitate devotees to become Brahmanas. They are engaged in deity worship and they do a lot of Brahminical. But after some years, what is the reason they drop this practice and they become Vaishyas, or sometimes they become even Shudras?
Yes, okay. So what happens is, well, the thing is that it's Kali Yuga. And so these divisions are not so clear-cut. And there is some mixing in the sense of natures, that some people, to some degree, they have some Brahminical tendencies, maybe, but they have other tendencies also because of Kali Yuga. And over a period of time, the deeper tendencies will become more prominent. Or even, like someone's a brahmachari or brahmacharini for some years, but there's some, at least while they're brahmacharini, there's some interest in the idea of becoming a householder. And that the nature is like that, and they do. So then they have to maintain. And some, if they're more, intelligent, self-controlled, and actually more Brahminical, they can be grihastas, but Brahmins, and not just go and work in some sort of job or in a factory or in a whatever, something, in some ordinary materialistic type of situation. But our experience is that actually the great majority, for them to really take up a Brahminical occupation as grihastas, and through that to be able to maintain their family, it seems to be extremely rare. Generally, they have to go and find some other way, sort of like an ordinary way, to make money, to maintain the family. So even they may have some Brahminical tendencies, like they may like to come and do deity worship from time to time on the altar in their spare time, but they're not able to develop a Brahminical way of life to the point that they can maintain the family through it. And then they have to go and do something else. So yeah, it's partly that people's natures are mixed, and it's partly that the society is mixed up. So people, I am going through the 12th chapter of the first canto in preparation for our course when we reach that point. And Srila Prabhupada, just yesterday or maybe the day before, I was reading a purport there, and Srila Prabhupada is saying that back in those days, in the days of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the Brahmins, the qualified Brahmins, they didn't have to earn money. They were provided for ultimately by the arrangement of the king. They were all looked after, and so they didn't have to go out of the Brahminical sphere of life, but rather it was really encouraged strongly. But now, if you want to be a Brahmin, well, of course you can teach, like in schools, but then what you're teaching it's not really these are not really Brahminical subjects. So, it's mixed. But otherwise, society is arranged in such ways that it's really very difficult for people, even if they have Brahminical tendencies, to simply focus in that way of life. They have to go outside it, at least if they become householders. So therefore you could say, well, better for them not to become householders, because then it's so much simpler to maintain a Brahminical way of life. But then the problem is that they may have such desires that they can't avoid grihastha life. Yes. So it's like that. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.